just kind of in a way where I wasn't flirty, because I'm not a flirt. Hey, what's up you guys? So I'm excited about today's story. I'm doing my very first story time today, and I figured it would be fun to talk about mine and my husband's story getting together and the process of that. This is the story of how me and my husband became a couple. So I met my husband at youth camp here in Florida, and I'm pretty sure he was at youth camp all 3 weeks that I was at youth camp. But I think I only spoke to him one time. And the one time I spoke to him, I'm almost sure that all I said was, "You look like Will Smith," because he kind of did to me at the time. I don't know, there's just something about him and Will Smith, they just reminded me of each other. I didn't really even find him attractive in the beginning because I wasn't really looking for a guy. So he flirted with me a little bit while we were at camp. And I think I knew that he was flirting with me, but I was also the type of person to underestimate when guys flirt with me. Oh, this guy flirted with you. Oh no, he didn't. I'm not pretty enough. That kind of thing. I knew he was flirting, but I was afraid that I would get my feelings ahead of my heart and that I would just end up getting hurt. So I just kind of ignored him. I also had this friend that year that was a guy that was staying in the same room with him. I guess he said stuff about my husband and it made me not want to think about him that way. I was like, oh, well, he just seems really annoying. So I just brushed it off. Like I didn't think about him or talk about him at all. I heard what they were saying to me about Corell, so I didn't really give myself a chance to think about him that way. Then it comes around to when Kentucky was going undefeated. It was the year that we had like the 8 McDonald's All-American basketball players on our team. We had a perfect season, all that kind of stuff. And I was sharing posts about Kentucky doing so well. I'm a diehard Wildcat girl, go Kentucky, go Wildcats fan. I was sharing all these posts about Kentucky being so awesome that year because they were. And he was commenting on them and I was like, there is a guy here who is commenting on my statuses about Kentucky basketball. So that was a moment where I think that was the first time, and this is so funny, but I think that was the first time that I ever was like, this guy is kind of cute. And then so I brought him up in front of a girl I knew that was doing the same thing. She was in the same program as me. And I was like, what do you think of Corell? And she was like, Corell, he's kind of a flirt. So I was like, oh, well, if he's a flirt, if people think he's a flirt, then writing him off again. And so we went a whole nother however many months of me being not interested in him because of what someone else said to me about him that actually wasn't true. So then I'm with my program, the people that I was living with at the time. We go to this youth event and he was there and he opened the event in prayer. I remember being like, wow, that man can pray. That's really cool. I like that. I like that trait in him, but I didn't think anything of it. And this was actually before he started commenting on my statuses. That whole youth event, I didn't look at him or talk to him. I just heard him pray and was like, wow, that's really cool. And then just kind of went about my day. So then he starts commenting on more and more statuses, not in a creepy way. So the more he started commenting on my statuses, the more he started saying, oh, I'm a Kentucky fan too, which, ladies, it was a lie. He was using a line on me. He's not a Kentucky fan. He's a Florida State fan, so watch him. At the time, I guess he was jumping on the bandwagon and being a Kentucky fan because we were winning. I remember being in one of my leader's offices one day and I was like, you know who I think is kind of maybe a little bit cute? And I'm pretty sure I worded it like that. Corell. I kind of think he's cute. So then I started telling her how he was commenting on my statuses and she was like, well, do you respond? Am I supposed to? This just shows you how bad I was at flirting. She was like, yeah, you're supposed to, if you want him to know that you're also interested back. I started, whenever he would comment on my status, I would like it, and I would comment back. Then I had the smallest of crushes on him. Not even to the point where I was like thinking about him a lot. And I saw him at other events and I was like, I'm interested in this guy. So when he comes up to me, I'm gonna try to make my posture not look like don't come near me, just kind of in a way where I wasn't flirty because I'm not a flirt. But I would just make sure that he knew that I was engaged in this conversation. So then at this point, the crush is getting things are stacking on top of each other. And we have this youth conference and he's there. And I didn't realize he was there until the very end. There was a point where it was altar call and I was in the altar praying for some of the girls that were there at the church. And I took a step back and sometimes I'll just scan and see see, is God pointing me in another direction? Is there someone else I need to pray for? And I was scanning and I looked to my right and I saw him in the altar praying for guys. And he was like praying. And in that moment, I think that was when the crush became a real thing. And it wasn't even like, oh, I'm gonna look at this guy praying for people in the altar. It wasn't like that. I saw him praying for these guys in the altar and I was like, I want that in a husband. It was a trait that I saw in him. I would love to have that in my future husband. And that's it. And I didn't think anything else about it. Well, then after service, if he comes and talks to me, I'll make myself open. I'm not gonna throw myself out there. I wanted him to pursue me. If this were my future husband, I want him to show the interest in me first. After service, we're on this little foyer area and he's sitting in a chair and he's talking, and he would occasionally make conversation with another girl in the group. And I was like, oh, well, he likes her, so whatever. It doesn't matter. Not a big deal. He's not interested in me. I'm not catching his attention. Wow. A lot of insecurities out. So he was talking to this other girl and I noticed it and I was like, okay, well maybe he's just interested in her. Once again, it was just one of those things where I was like, oh, okay. And so then he starts a conversation with me. Someone he knew was from Kentucky that lived near him, closer than I did. And he was asking me, when are you gonna get me an L8? And I was like, why doesn't this person give you an L8? You know them, they live closer to you. How have they not given you an L8? This was probably just another line. I'm sure that this person gave them an L8. And if you don't know what L8 is, it's a Kentucky soft drink. It's like the most amazing thing ever. He was like, no, he's never given me one, so you should totally give me one. So then I think it was the next weekend, there was another event I knew he was gonna be at. I had L8 that I could have given him. And that morning I grabbed the L8 to give to him. But then I was like, is this too desperate? Is it weird that I remember that he wanted an L8 from last weekend? And so within myself, in this conversation that I was having with myself, I was like, yeah, that's a little too weird. So I put the L8 back and went to the event. Later, hours later, I'm in the cafeteria getting my food. He's behind me and I didn't even know. And he was like, you gonna walk by and just not talk to me? And I was like, hey, I didn't see you. And so he asked me if I needed help and I told him, no, I'm totally fine. And I had like this plate full of food and had my napkins and I had a soda and probably 2 other plates of food because I wasn't eating good back then. And he grabbed my plate of food and took it to the table. That's what I need. A man who knows I'm independent, but will still help me. So he grabbed my plate of food, sat it down at the table, got me some napkins, and then sat across from me, and then we didn't talk. Both of us were just focused on eating. I had to eat within 5 minutes to get back to my post of this event because my station where I was super busy. I scarfed down my food. I didn't care that he was sitting across from me. And then I went back to my station. We get towards the end of the event, and the event was so much fun, and people were just dancing, and the whole church was filled, and it was so much fun. And I wasn't even focused on this guy behind me. So I get all the footage I wanted of these videos of my friends playing music, and I go back and where a couple of my other friends were standing, and he was there. At this point, he's talking to his friends and then talking to me. We didn't really have a lot of conversation at this event. The event ends, everyone disperses, we all go our separate ways. I was like, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna do something really weird, something I've never done before. And I had the nerve, nay, the bravery, to post my Snapchat name on Instagram. Now I know what you're thinking. Harli, how dare you? Harli, why? Here's why. He followed me on Instagram and I knew that. So I was thinking maybe he'll see it, maybe he'll add me, maybe this will be a conversation starter. We'll see. The next night, someone added me on Snapchat, but it was a weird name. It wasn't a name to make me think it was a girl, but because on my post, a friend of mine I didn't have on Snapchat liked my post. So when I got a Snapchat from this weird name, I thought it was gonna be this person that had liked my picture. I opened the Snapchat and it's Karel. And I'm like, Karel just Snapchatted me. So I go into my leader's room, who I told I had a crush on him, and I was like, Karel just Snapchatted me, what do I do? And she was like, respond? That made sense. We go the next week Snapchatting each other just once or twice a day. He always Snapchatted me first. And I remember getting these Snapchats every day from him and being like, this guy is actually legitimately funny. He can actually make me laugh. And I love that. But just joking and having fun back and forth. We did that for about a week. And so I was like, this guy likes me at this point. I am ready for my wedding day. So then he posts a status that says his phone's broken. Of course his phone's broken. This is just a forgotten dream. So I comment on his status and I say, oh no, what happened? And he Facebook messaged me. He slid into my DMs. Every single day, he Facebook messages me. He was really sweet, but not overly flirty. One night, he's Facebook messaging me and he says, I'm gonna get my phone back tomorrow. I was like, oh, that's awesome. Now we don't have to communicate through Facebook Messenger. Being all sly, trying to get his phone number. And then he sends hashtag stop flirting. And it felt as if the world had crumbled around me. Stop flirting. He's literally telling me to stop flirting with him. What do I do? So I did what any girl does, and I played it off with a joke. And I told him this, and in the message I was like, well, I am flirting with you. And he didn't respond the entire rest of the evening. The next day comes around and he texts me with his phone number. And so I was like, well, he knows I'm flirting with him, so this must be a thing now. We start texting for about a month. We're getting to know each other. We have a couple phone calls. So we get into a pretty big argument about something that I didn't know about him. And we go about a week without talking. And I was really, 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 really mad at him at this point. That whole week that we weren't talking, though, we were at an event where we had to see each other every single night. I gave him plenty of opportunity to come to me first. He says this now, that he was just really, really scared that I hated him. The last night I texted him and was like, hey, we just need to talk, because I knew we would see each other at future events and I didn't want it to be weird. Didn't want him to feel like he couldn't talk to my friends. I wasn't the type of person to go and drag him. I didn't do that. The last night we go outside and we have a conversation, just a civil, mature conversation of me saying, look, I know now that we'll probably never work out, but I still want to be your friend for the sake of things not being weird, because we're around each other so often. This conversation kind of ended in a weird place, and it wasn't the goal. It wasn't where I had planned on starting it. I mostly wanted him to know that I forgave him and I was ready to move on and that we could be civil with each other. But it ended with me putting myself out there and saying, you know, you have some things to work on. We both know that. If you're interested in me, that's great. I'll wait for you, but I'm not gonna wait forever. I basically told him that once he had figured himself out, if he wanted to be with me, then I would give it a try. And I wasn't giving him an ultimatum. He likes to say I was, and I wasn't. All I said was that if this is something you want, I'll work with you at it. And so a couple of days later, we call each other and he tells me that he wants to pursue me. This is the sweetest thing I had ever heard in my life. I wanted to be sure that we were taking things slow and not rushing into things. So we spent a couple of weeks just getting to know each other, flirting with each other, for real flirting, not like before. We just took this relationship one step at a time. We were really smart about it, thank God. He wanted to make things official like 5 weeks before I did, and I just wasn't ready for it yet. And the last day of high school camp, which is funny because that's where we met, I went to him. I found him that day and he looked kind of sad, kind of like he was in a bad mood. And I was like, hey, do you want to just go for it? And his face lit up as soon as I said that. He was like, what do you mean? And I was like, do you want to just become official like right now? Do you want to just go for it? Let's just do this. And he was like, yes, yes, yes. And so he hugged me, and the very next day I went to Kentucky for 3 weeks. So the first 3 weeks that we were dating, I was in Kentucky. Our first date was great. I ended up getting in a traffic jam. I was like at 2 hours later than I was supposed to be. It was raining, so what he planned didn't work. He took me to Chipotle, which was like first date goals. So we dated for 11 months. He proposed to me. 11 months later, we got married. So that's the story of how me and my husband became a couple. I'm hoping to be able to get him to do his side of this story. Thank you so much for watching. If you want more videos, if you want more story times, be sure to give this video a thumbs up.